Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another evening with Synamon. And my special guest today is Judge Steve Teske. Welcome to all you online community viewers, as well as our audience here, our viewers here in the audience. I want to start out by saying how wonderful it is to know that you can work within the community and have access to your judge, as well as others who have impact on our lives, and I'm so thankful that you were able to be with us today. I know you're a very busy man. He rushed to get here, and he's going to be rushing when he leaves here, and every time I talk to you, you're out of time. But he still takes the time to handle our business here in Clayton County. The reason I asked Judge Teske to join us this evening is because he has a new program, and I'd like for you to share that with us. Talk to us about the anti-gang program that's coming.
Be glad to. I don't know how many of your audience may have attended the gang seminar back in November at Mondays Mill High School. Okay. But as you recall, then Superintendent Dr. Thompson got with me and some of the chiefs of police and with my chief of staff, Officer Graves, who I made the person to spearhead this, put together that thing, and we were very pleasantly surprised that we had like 450 parents.
I remember that.
Remember that, how big that place was packed, okay?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And as you recall, when I was asked to speak, remember that book I held up, okay? And I said that there's a model that has been shown to be the most effective model in combating gangs, used in Los Angeles, used in Chicago. And it's a model that was developed through the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, which happens to be the same organization that distributes federal grant money to all the states involving juvenile delinquency and prevention, okay, programs. And so I since then got a number of copies of those books, put together a steering committee. The steering committee consists of the heads of agencies from, Board of Health to mental health to the school system, or their representatives, depending upon the schedule of the heads of the agencies. According to this model, developing an effective gang resistance program is that you need to involve the community.
Yes.
Okay. And that you have to balance law enforcement with community action and treatment and for purposes of prevention.
Right.
Because sometimes we tend to forget that in combating gangs, if you use only a law enforcement approach, then you're only going to be going after those who are already in gangs.
Right.
Okay, right. For the purpose of catching them and doing things to them. And we therefore, in doing that, neglect to put resources and energy into the rest of the kids in our community who are potential victims of gangs. And what I mean by victims, I'm talking about potential recruits. Okay. So in all, where we are right now in the steering committee is coming up, they are developing a strategy now for identifying members of the community, like the Clayton County White Homeowners Association, for example, okay? Because in that book, it expressly mentions homeowner associations, and that you need to reach out to them. Okay. Of course, I already knew that anyway.
We know this, right?
We know that because you and I have been working on this for some time. Okay.
Absolutely.
Remember the Code Red program?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so that's where they are right now. They've done a lot of work since November, but here's the thing. What we want to do is we want to get some staff people. And right now all the agencies are with the economy the way it is. It's very difficult for us to put forth any resources that can be dedicated solely to this gang resistance program. So that's when I had asked my chief of staff to go after this $200,000 grant. I don't know if you may have read in the in the neighbor recently, okay, and one of the advantages you mentioned when you're opening about me traveling a whole lot, and so one of the, I mean, there are advantages to this because, I was in D.C. about a week or 2 weeks ago for a federal a meeting where I represent Georgia, and this particular agency, which is connected to OJJDP, who distributes the grants, as I said, I'm able to get a heads up, okay, on what monies are available to the states, and so that we can go ahead and apply for those grants. And this is one of them. Okay. And it's going to be a $200,000 grant, and part of that grant will be dedicated to two full-time staff people. Oh, okay. So think about it. That we're going to have 2 full-time staff that will then come in to be able to coordinate all the different agencies and people and organize them to implement the approach that has been shown to work in other places like Los Angeles and Chicago. Okay, very good. The most important thing I heard you say, well, not the most important, everything was important, but one thing that I heard you say was that the program is to prevent or to deal with the issues before our children even get into the gangs. Yes. So now, how do we know? How do we identify? I mean, tell me, how would I know if my child was involved or was being recruited for a gang? And if so, what do I do? Okay. Well, there's 3 things we need to talk about. First of all, I can go ahead and mention, some of the characteristics that a parent can be looking out for in their children. But sometimes a lot of them are really subtle because these kids have learned that what they would otherwise wear out there that would associate them with a gang, they're pretty smart about not letting mommy and daddy see it. Okay? But the telltale sign is figuring out who they're hanging with. Their friends. Okay? It's always been in... It is. And you've heard me say before, when you've asked me to come and make presentations yourself at the Clayton County White Homeowners Association, that one of the #1 causes of delinquent conduct is your friends, who we associate with. Are we associating with those who are antisocial, or are they pro-social? And the key thing is that parents need to realize that the Constitution of the United States, which guards against unreasonable searches and seizures and gives us the right to free speech and so forth and so on, do not apply in our home and do not apply to parents. Okay? Right. They only apply to the government. Right. They apply to the police. We can search and we can search, okay? And so I'm always telling parents in my courtroom, don't be afraid when Johnny's not there to go look in the drawer. So look under the bed to go, and if he or she starts complaining about, this is my stuff, this is my room. No, it's not your room. You don't pay rent. You're a minor. You don't have the capacity, In fact, a lot of people don't understand under Georgia law, a parent can go make their child get a job at McDonald's and on Friday take the paycheck. The whole paycheck. Take the whole paycheck. Yes, absolutely. Okay? And they don't get a dime of it. Right. Okay? But to take this further, to answer, to complete your question, complete the answer to your question, is that some of the things that you would see on kids that are less subtle, okay, more obviously would be colors, okay. Do you find them going out wearing maybe the same color every day? Is it red? Is it black? Okay. How about a bandana? A parent can go look to see if there's any bandanas that's in their room or in their pockets, okay? Because when they come in the house, they'll wear the bandana out there, okay? But they'll put it in their pocket real quick or hide it somewhere when they come into the house. Maybe sometimes the lingo that they're picking up, okay? The other thing, too, is when you open up their notebook from school. Look at their book bag. Right. Take a look to see if they're scribbling certain types of signs, okay? Kids, it's funny how they like to do that graffiti on their own notebook paper, okay? All right? Now, in terms of prevention, a parent should never assume, especially in our community where we are in a metropolitan Atlanta area, and may I say, and the rural areas are having this problem too. But so in comparison, what I'm saying is that if the rural areas are having gang problems, we can go down to Pike County and there's some gang issues. Okay, then you know it's greater in Clayton County, and because of that, a parent should never assume that their kid is not in some way number one, is not associated with the gang, or in the least, there's not an effort to try to get their child in a gang. See, because even if a child doesn't want to get in a gang, and even if a child is resisting, there's still a problem, and that's the risk that the gangbangers are trying to recruit your child. And that's the biggest problem we're having, is these gangbangers are constantly, every day, in the schools, out on the streets, trying to recruit other kids, okay? And when they begin to resist it, then it becomes dangerous for them. Okay, they get knocked down. They're attacked. They're assaulted. All right. And a lot of these kids are afraid to tell their parents. All right. Afraid now that their parents are going to come on down to the school, cause a big scene. Then it gets worse for the kid at school. You see the vicious cycle?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Let me just say this. I've been there. My son is 25 years old now, and when he was in high school at Tri-City High School, I went there. You know, and parents have to go there, regardless to what our children feel. Well, parents walk a really thin line with that because of the fact that we're concerned about our children, and we don't want anyone, you know, attacking them and doing those kinds of things. But my concern is, since we know this as a community, we know these gangs are here, we know these people, why can't we control that? I mean, why can't we address that? In other words, a simple, why can't we get rid of them? You know, I know that sounds very simplistic, but if I know that these are criminals, just like if they were any other type of criminal, I know where they are and I know what they do, why can't we handle that business? And just in a place like Clayton County, I'm just perplexed. I don't understand why we can't get a handle on it.
Because, you know, Synamon, it is a complex issue with a lot of dynamics. We do know that we can do an effective job in resisting gangs. Okay, it's just the thing is that it's time that we organize in the right way to do it. Okay. For example, let me give credit to one of our state representatives about 4 or 5 years ago, Roberta Abdul Salam. Okay. You know, after Krista Williams was murdered at that party, okay, and then, you know, within a couple weeks we had another drive-by shooting, okay. Actually, somebody was killed in the backyard at a party, okay. But, you know, the community woke up, and if you recall, I was on a couple television news networks. We called folks down there. After that, Roberta Abdul Salam had called together a group of people from different agencies. Because the summer was coming up, and what we're going to do for these kids during the summer. And so she made a call for people to come up with, you know, number one, for the summer was to come up with day camps and things of that nature. And then when school started, after school programs, if you think about it though, since and they did this, and it happened, okay. Now I tell people, think about it since then in terms of deaths, in terms of drive-by shootings, okay? We haven't had incidents like the Krista Williams and so forth since 4 or 5 years ago, okay? Now we've had some incidents, okay? You know, but the point I'm trying to make is that while it's not enough, we need to organize better, because Roberta Abdul Salam was just one person who did a phenomenal job all by herself, okay, in bringing all this together. There's no reason why we can't take a look at the research where there have been programs used in the past like LA and Chicago, this program I'm talking about, and we develop a steering committee, which the model calls for, and we've done that, and that we are now going to go ahead and put together everyone as part of this gang resistance thing, and we're going to do it just like it says in this model, because we know that this model has worked in cities with worse gang problems than Clayton County.
Okay, let me interrupt you. The model, and the model is based on?
The Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency.
You told me this, but I just want model based on the Office of
Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. So anyone in your audience, if they just go on the internet and just plug into their search engine OJJDP, or Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, and then just, of course, just go to the home site of, and then you'll see, you know, this is an agency under the U.S. Department of Justice, It's under the U.S. Attorney General. And there's an administrator of the Office of Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention who's appointed by the President. In fact, I serve on the Federal Advisory Committee for OJJDP. We advise President Obama and Congress on juvenile justice issues. And we just finished in our meeting in D.C. Writing the annual report for President Obama and helping and suggesting to him some of the leadership characteristics we think that it'd be advisable for him to consider when picking the new administrator. But back to this, though.
I'm so encouraged by what you just said. I got a little chill. That's
well,
good.
Good. Yes,
that's good. Yeah. We're able here in Clayton County to have that kind of contact at the national level, which is going to affect us directly.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So people can go. They can actually take a look. And at the program and where it breaks it down, the nuts and bolts of it, and how it talks about the need for a steering committee, who it should comprise of, and the 5 different types of ways to deal with this with community action, bringing the agencies together. It talks about education. It talks about after-school programming for kids. It talks about counseling. It talks about family, working with the family dynamics, like the opening up with a question that you did about how do I as a parent know that my child is involved in a gang. And the greatest focus on this really is about prevention. Because think about it for a moment. Think about this, Synamon. We know that there are gangbangers now, and there have been, right? How do you dry up a gang? Okay, how do you kill a gang? I mean, it's like a weed, and you put whatever that poison is on the weed to kill it, right? Okay.
Right.
Well, that weed loves water. Well, gangs need new members. Okay. Gangs eventually, people in gangs eventually go out as they get older, right? And they need fresh blood coming up. So the prevention, what this model is about is that the more that we focus on the prevention and helping these kids who are potential recruits and protecting them, then what we're doing is that it's tougher for the gangbangers, to recruit fresh blood, and eventually it becomes very chaotic, for the gangbangers. Plus, let me share something else with you. A lot of these kids in the gangs, really don't have a criminal intent, They're scared, and so they join, But a lot of them don't necessarily do criminal things, Now I will tell you though, but those kids who do criminal things, I know for a fact that we have older adults, 18, 19, 20 years of age, Some of them gangbangers. What they'll do is that they'll go to these kids and they'll say, hey, for every burglary, we'll give you $50 cash. We're looking for, when you break in the house, we're looking for cash, electronics, guns, and jewelry. That's what they tell them. You bring that to us. Well, all of a sudden these kids figure the math out. Now, $50 isn't much, but it is a lot to them because they're kids, right? Well, then they do the math. It's like selling cars. The car salesman makes more money by doing volume sales. So they think, one house is $50, 5 houses is $250. So the more houses I break into, so about a year in a few months, a year and a half ago, we keep data. Since 1992, we have a very sophisticated automated data collection system. What happened is that I started to see a significant increase in number of juvenile burglaries, okay?
Okay.
All right. Well, as you remember, that's about the time I started Code Red.
Code Red,
okay?
Right.
And I ended up having to say, okay, I need to do an override on my detention assessment instrument. If a kid commits a residential burglary and the house is actually occupied, maybe not at the moment they commit the burglary, but someone's living in there,
right.
Okay? Then they have to be detained and come see me the next day. Okay? And because these kids talk, there's a network talking out there. And I had to get them in to tell them, because what was happening, I would have houses, like 5 houses in a row broken into. What's going on here? Well, it's because they're doing the math. Breaking here, breaking here, breaking here, breaking here. As many as they can break, as quick as they can, the more cash they make.
They get $50.
That's right. Okay? So then they start getting locked up. Now, you know, most of them, 99%, I've let out the next day on electronic monitoring. Now I have GPS global positioning. I know where any kid is.
I just read about that today. I wasn't even familiar with that.
Yeah, so now, but now it's sending a message out. These kids are now saying, oh my great, you know, because these adults are saying, if you get caught, don't worry, they won't lock you up. You're just a juvie. Okay? You know, and so now we're beginning to see a decline. We're beginning to see a slow decline in the number of juvenile break-ins.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So now, break-ins being one of the activities, and I'm going to interrupt us for a second. Was my producer talking to me? She wasn't? Okay. All right. You talked about breaking in. What other type of activities are these kids involved in besides breaking into the homes and things of that nature?
Well, you know, they're into you know, car thefts. We find that you know, they also get money by stealing a car and taking it to a chop shop. Okay. Then there's all the gang. Some of the biggest problems that tend to be, are the violent ones, is really more the gang on gang stuff. Okay. The thing about Clayton County is that unlike New York or LA, where you have territories, so to speak, you know, some are clearly marked. Like you go to Forest Park, which is largely Hispanic, then you're going to deal with your Sur 13 and Brownside Locos, you know, and so forth, because there's our largest Hispanic population is over there. But beyond that, a lot of these kids are of different gangs going to the same school. Okay. And so what we're getting is we get a number of assaults, okay, physical contact, you know, that is a result of gangbanger on gangbanger, okay. You may have recalled, it made the news, you know, a couple months ago, where you had 2 Jonesboro High School students who very seriously beat up another kid who was one of their gang members, but they caught him talking to a rival gang member. So they beat him down, but they beat him down so bad that he was unconscious, had to go to the hospital. And I saw the pictures of this young man. It was horrible. It was horrible. Okay. And that's an aggravated assault. So, you know, we get some of those things, and that kid easily could have been killed. In fact, the testimony was that if the kid got one more blow to the head, most likely he would have been killed. Okay, you know. Now these 2 young men who were in my court, okay, they were facing 5 years in a youth prison. Okay, all right. But the interesting thing is they had no background. That was so sad about it. They had no history. You know, they were relatively decent in school, okay, in terms of their grades, and their attendance was not bad at all. It was actually quite good, you know. These are 2 smart kids who have a lot of potential, okay. So I had to make a decision. Do I send them away for 5 years? What I did, and I had to hold them accountable. I had to teach them. So I'd send them to our short-term program, which is 2 months restrictive custody, but they're coming back for intensive probation.
Thank you. Thank you for that, because there are so many situations when we know this, and we talked about this before. Kids make mistakes, you know, and it doesn't mean that we have to send them away for the next 5 to 10 years. We actually have a question for you.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yes, we have a viewer who would like to know, do you believe that gangs happen because of cultural differences?
Yes, I do. I believe that it does play a role in that. We can look back historically, and I'm just not talking anecdotally from experience, but you know, being a juvenile judge, especially on the bench for 10 years, that I've had to, you know, I've done a lot of research, been through a lot of training, and one of the things that we're trained on is the history of gangs, and you know, gang activity goes back
before we were
long time, okay,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
but we find that a lot of what created gangs in a lot of ways was the differences we see on the outside, okay, all right, where, you know, if you look up at Boston, you know, it may be, you know, or New York City, it may be the Italians feeling they have to get together, and the Irish getting together, and they created gangs to survive because they had to compete for the same resources, okay, just to make it, you know, which included politics and who could get the most votes and so forth, and